Marin Katusa's new book, The Colder War, is now on bookshelves. Marin pulls away the curtain on how Russia, China, and Iran have come to dominate the global energy stage and put the petrodollar to rest once and for all. Find out why Dr. Ron Paul and critics alike are calling The Colder War one of the most important books you will read this year. Visit PalisadeRadio.com and enter our weekly drawing to win a free signed copy of Marin's book. That's PalisadeRadio.com.
This is Palisade Radio, and I'm your host, Colin Cattell. On the line with us today is famed geologist and exploration analyst Brent Cook. Brent, thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here, Colin.
I want to read a small excerpt from your website, explorationinsights.com. It states, quote, "In 2011, the mining sector, and particularly the junior sector as measured by the GDXJ, collapsed, falling 26% in 2011, 23% in 2012, and a further 59% in 2013. By comparison, Exploration Insights' portfolio showed a loss of 2% in 2011, was down 14% in 2012, and off 18% in 2013. Brent, gold investors have suffered terribly over the past 3 years, and minimizing losses has turned out to be key. The sad reality is that many people's portfolios have been reduced to nothingness. What has allowed you to pick the right companies to avoid these major losses in the downturn?
Yeah, that's a good question. I should point out that I've had some disasters as well. But overall, I think, the GDXJ measures, I think there's 70 or so companies in there. I focus on maybe 15 or 20 companies. And, since it's my money I'm really investing and talking about in my letter, I'm extremely conservative in what is a really high risk industry. So of the 1,300 companies or so out there that are looking for gold or mining gold or along the junior mining companies, I've got the advantage in that I can look at all of those and pick what I think are the few companies, few projects that actually make sense and make money. And really, I'm all about being conservative and identifying prospects early on that offer, legitimate high margin operations if they go into production. So I think that's one of the main reasons is I don't have to pick everything. I'm very, very selective.
It's widely stated in this business that geologists do not make for good CEOs. They're oftentimes too focused on a project and unable to decipher between a passion and a viable deposit. Many geologists are good at rocks, but not good at turning rocks into money. You, on the other hand, have found that you're good at both finding rocks and turning them into money. What's allowed you to rise to the top and become a leader in your field?
Thanks. I'm not sure I'm a leader, but I've been successful. I was a geologist, exploration consultant to a number of major companies up until about 1997, at which point I joined Rick Rule as his mining analyst. And making that transition from pure rocks to the financial end of it was a hard lesson. I learned very quickly that it's not necessarily just about the rocks or about the dream. And in the first 3 years I worked with Rick, long story short, I lost a lot of money real quickly, and that was a good lesson. And I think that's what's helped a lot. And then since then, I've gotten to know a lot of really smart financial people and honest people in this industry. And so I guess I learned the hard way what it's really about, combining the geology and the financial end of things.
Before we hit record on this interview today, you were talking about a discussion that you had with the CEO of Goldcorp, and that he said it's getting extremely difficult to find large economic gold deposits, and he believes that peak gold production is actually going to occur in 2014 or 2015. This has huge implications for the industry. Can you touch on that point?
Yeah, this is something the CEO stated during the Denver Gold Show, I believe it was, and it's interesting. Something I've been saying all along is that it's getting harder and harder to find legitimate economic deposits. What we saw when the gold price ran from 350 to 1900 was that your input costs, your mining costs, your capital costs, etc., increased almost in tandem. So in reality, the margin off of those deposits really didn't increase that much. And then with the recent drop in the gold price, most of these companies are treading water at best. And what's happening and what's going to go into the future is what these companies are doing now to save money, to become profitable, at least break even, is they're cutting exploration to zero. That's their future G&A or R&D essentially. So they're not looking for new deposits. Deposits they've got, they're high grading, meaning they're pulling the guts, the best part of these deposits out, which keeps them alive for the time being, but sterilizes a lot of the gold resources that used to be in their reserve account. So their actual reserves on the book are dwindling. And thirdly, we've looked all over the earth pretty well, and most of your outcropping deposits have been found. And now the exploration it's a lot more time consuming, a lot more expensive to go looking for basically blind deposits that are hidden under gravel or some sort of cover. And that's much more expensive. And even when you find something, it's got to be better, because to get to it, you've got to move a lot of rock, or you've got to go underground. It's generally metallurgically more complex. So for all those reasons, we're going to be finding a lot fewer deposits going forward. And I think he's right, and the gold production is going to decline. And there's a real positive side to that, in that, and this is where I'm really focused, that all we've got to do as speculators or investors in this sector is identify the very few deposits early on that are going to make money, and will, I assume, or my thesis is, will be the acquisition target of these mining companies over the next few years, as they realize that they've found nothing to replace what they've been mining.
Peak gold is happening, companies are high grading, explorations come to a halt, and we're now 4 years into a downturn. Some of the junior bull markets of the past have been pretty incredible, but it sounds like we're setting up for potentially one of the largest ones yet. What's your outlook on how dramatic this bull market could be when it starts and takes off?
Well, I think, historically, this reminds me a lot of the 97 to about 2002 bust. And that was brutal. This one is getting to match that. It's awful brutal out there. And the question is, when does new money come into this sector? And that's tough to figure, because I work with a number of funds, and they came into this sector in the early 2000s with the theses that for a number of reasons the gold price had to rise, and they were right. The gold price did rise, and they bought companies that they felt would increase in value as that happened, make more money essentially, and that didn't happen. And they've been burned, and I don't see where the new money is going to come from to get this thing really moving again. My suspicion is that 2015 is going to be rocky, but between now and the end of 2015 is going to be the prime time for the brave souls in this sector to start buying into the companies that really can produce an economic deposit, because 2016, 17, 18, I think we're going to see a real run on valuable assets. So although it's tough right now and it's going to be rocky, now is the time to identify valuable assets that will increase in value as this peak gold and the difficulty in discovering new deposits starts to become a reality.
And Brent, you don't know where the new money might come from, but maybe you've identified the catalysts that will kickstart the new leg up, and that might just be some of the majors starting to run low on reserves and needing to start acquiring, or the gold price rising. What do you think is going to be the initial catalyst to start moving in 2016 and beyond?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not very good, and I don't try and predict the market and market sentiment in that. But I know for a fact the major miners are going to be running short on new deposits, and they're going to have to acquire the ones out there that make money. So the catalyst, in my view, is going to be very, very selective and focused on the companies with legitimate projects and companies with a bank account and a good exploration team that can find these new deposits. And something about exploration, when you get, and goes back to what you started at the first of this, and that a lot of these geologists are running companies and they're dreamers. The most important thing in an exploration company when you're evaluating one is finding one with a team that knows when to quit. Because we know that 99 out of 100 prospects are not going to work. So their job is to, as rapidly as possible, assess and and kill a project without wasting a lot of money on something that doesn't stand a chance.
Can you offer any ideas to our listeners as to what companies are developing the very big projects of the future right now?
You mean you want a stock picks?
Absolutely.
Well, that's what my letter is about. I will give you one, and that we bought a couple months ago. It's doubled, and I've taken some money off the table, so I own it for a very low cost basis. That's Caliber Exploration. They're operating in Nicaragua. They've got joint ventures with two major mining companies, IM Gold and B2 Gold. B2 Gold has two mines in Nicaragua already. And they're onto one prospect that surface sampling and trenching and such is pretty interesting. It's called Minnesota. And B2 Gold will be drilling that, I guess, starting in a couple of weeks. That looks pretty interesting to me. It's pure exploration, but it looks pretty interesting. I'm actually heading down there right after the New Orleans conference to have a look at that, and we'll be reporting back in my letter. That's interesting. I think in terms of a company with a legitimate deposit going into production, just went into production, that's Virginia Gold. They discovered it, sold it to Goldcorp, and they'll be receiving a royalty off of that. That's a really safe bet. So those are two that I think are worth watching. I guess a third is Pilot Gold. This thing's been hammered pretty hard. Great exploration team. They know what a deposit really looks like. They've got some very prospective prospects in Turkey and in Nevada.
Well, there you have it. For more of Brent's stock picks, listeners can visit explorationinsights.com and sign up for Brent's weekly publication. Brent, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you, Colin.
Vladimir Putin is a self-made man. He did not come from money. He did not come from a royal family. He was your blue-collar boy who did well. Putin has positioned himself in the center of the chessboard in the energy matrix of the world. Right now, Putin and his allies in China, India, Brazil, all of the emerging markets are aligning together to fight the European Union, the IMF, and America. Eventually, the rest of the world will realize that Obama and America are hiding behind this curtain with no powers anymore. Putin specifically has positioned Russia to become a global superpower, and America has never been more vulnerable than it is today.